Searching for ways to redeem themselves.
BioWare certainly are. Wrestling isn't real. Do you want to explain that intro? Unequivocal. I am Couch Coop. We are going to be looking at 2019's Anthem, which came out of EA and BioWare after the release of the Dragon Age series. That is something that just doesn't compute still to this day. We're also obviously looking at this game in 2024 and on my PlayStation 5. Not seen it before on this system. We do get a 2160 and a pegged 30, which is a bit of a shock, but that resolution's pretty awesome. And also firing this game up after 5 years, and I will say graphically it's not looking terrible still, and I can't say that about other games from 2019, particularly on the PlayStation 5. Also, I'm amazed they didn't roll out a free upgrade to put this on SSD. This cost me £80 and I pre-ordered it. As that intro suggests, I was quite literally snake charmed into getting this game. We'll go into the details of that demo in a second. Let's just soak up some of the visuals, because she is still a looker. And it was back then on the PlayStation 4 and Pro. It was a very advanced looking game, and it had such a unique control mechanism that the gaming community was like, this is the new thing. This is going to be the way forward for BioWare, and this is a whole new IP that's going to have huge amounts of sequel. Trouble was, it's like an eggshell, and there was no yolk, and there was no egg.
Last sensors nearby, with wyverns circling. I see them. Fire breathers. We still need to get a reading. Hang in there, your javelin can take some heat.
It is mad playing it again. The muscle memory kind of sort of came straight back with that flying mechanic, which incidentally is kind of genius, with its clicking of the sticks and being elevated and hovering and using the cooldown. Just come off the back of the Returnal review for 2024 as well, and surprising similarities with the sort of minute-to-minute combat with the dashing and going to the shoulder buttons for shooting. But again, we already see that shallowness in this tutorial, with the aliens being a bit spongy and everything just feeling a little bit cobbled. Like most Marvel trailers, the best bits of this game were slung into that demo. So there was quite a lot of enemy variation, and it took you to some pretty parts of the map. It even gave you sort of a formidable boss to fight. It was kind of end to end what the entirety of Anthem was about, and they ended up just padding that formula out to a game that was like 40-50 hours. I put 48 hours into it. I just checked over on the PlayStation 4 and Pro. We all kind of at one stage enjoyed ourselves with this game.
There, last echo. You did it. That should silence it.
What you're seeing here with this intro mission, it's kind of a locked Jaeger, i.e. your class is the middle ground guy. You can be a Colossus, you can be a slightly more nimble version, which I'll show you in a second. But I was really flabbergasted at the quality of looking at this again. This is obviously where a lot of the attention went. A lot of crazy locations, teleporting around, using underwater cooling systems on your jetpack and shooting a whole variety of enemies. At this stage, you were still none the wiser as to what is wrong with this game.
You should swing by my amplifier in the Enclave.
Something wrong?
No, not wrong. More like fun. Drop on by whenever.
I've just had a look to see if I can find that original walkthrough of this hub that was shown to us many moons ago, and I think they've pulled it because it was so different. It was one of these No Man's Sky moments where it's like, this is what they promised us, this is what they gave us. So that one may have been buried a bit. I am quite lazy with that stuff, but still, I can remember with crystal clarity the sort of letdown once the hub was revealed to you. There's a couple of reasons I chose to look at this game again. I've managed to wangle a month of PSN on the UK account, and this is DRM. I can't believe that. Back when I got hold of this game in 2019, I was buying Sony Access like annually, didn't really care, didn't really notice this sort of thing. But again, a bit knocked back that you cannot play this single player offline, so major points lost. That could have been the least of the additions that would have been added on patches. Even Monster Hunter World gives you a flawless offline single player game, and that's one of the reasons I added it to that intro, because this came out afterwards and it dragged me away from that game. And when I looked at the day one releases and the status of both games right up till this current day, it's very clear that Monster Hunter World is an absolute giant compared to Anthem, both on its release and in 2024. Why are we looking at all this boring stuff? Well, this is where Anthem got you early doors. It was a very big cosmetic incentive, both with the javelins. Did I call them Jaegers earlier? It was a real toe dipper to see what you were going to get with guns opening up and different slots for all your weapons. Every single special, you had 2 on both shoulder buttons, could be switched out for a better piece of loot that you found. It was noticeable that they were trying to put in this addictive, always online sort of daily playing psychology with a lot of the rewards, but that also diluted things hugely.
You ready to jump in? Yes, I am. Well then, let's not keep that big bad world waiting. Our contract is to locate an Arcanist named Matthias. Tassin has given us the last location.
Just back to BioWare briefly, and you know when you have a game on your shelf that starts sort of squealing at you, sort of talking to you, going, you never finished me, you neglected me. Inquisition, Dragon Age is doing that to me right now, and I really want to go back in and I want to get refreshed with it all again and probably do a Still Holds Up, because there is nothing in this game that points to anything that is in the Dragon Age series, like nothing. It was really shocking. I saw the same thing with The Witcher and Cyberpunk 2077, like even a vein of quality that ran through both of those games that you could pull out and say, oh, well, it's a little bit like the X, Y, and Z elements. There's nothing really similar. And that was one of the initial sort of buzzes of excitement, was like, this is something so brand new. It really doesn't tread in any of the sort of RPG footsteps that a lot of BioWare material has traditionally. And that was, again, source of excitement. Yeah, 10 hours in, you realise that there was just no re-roll, you were in the same locations constantly, these little Scar dudes are terrible. When big stuff does turn up, it's okay, but it's just few and far between. That treble dash, that double jump, it should feel really like liberating and platinum Bayonetta-like, where you're getting out of the way at the last minute. I mean, it is a third-person ARPG for God's sakes, but if it's detached, it kind of feels more like this. It is pretty though, there's just absolutely no denying it, and we played a lot of this game. Its online service aspects gave us free events, there was a huge like giant on the map like Titan thing at one point, and we would repeat and rinse some of the missions. There was some variation. One of the best bosses is the demo boss, surprisingly enough, and some of the cooler Jaegers or javelins are the big stocky Colossus guy. They all came with their own unique specials, including the acrobatic antics that you can see going on here, and a lot of them felt very impactful, and the Colossus guy was extremely handy for synergies, but it never really came to that. That was another thing with the game, is it's surprisingly easy, and getting in and out of trouble with flying or hovering does offer an amazingly unique angle to the battlefield, but it's too easily abused on this game model. Capcom should have made this game with a sort of Lost Planet vibe to it, and probably put some split screen in. Xenoprimal is actually a really good place to look. If you got quite heavily into Anthem and you like that sort of 4 to 5 co-op setup, this game's beautiful and made by the aforementioned. Is Anthem worth going back to in 2024? That's a real toughie. I think if you've never played it and you can get to it without spending any money whatsoever, it's totally worth looking at. At the cost I got it at launch, I will never forgive BioWare for that. There's also been so much water under the bridge with third-person ARPGs. What is this water you talk of? Yeah, fair enough. I did also want to talk about It's Always Online briefly. You are going to be permanently photobombed and disrupted by people who are either OP or underpowered, just wandering into your area when you go on an excursion. I thought it was like a locked system, but it isn't. People just join at random. You'll get some vastly OP guy come in and completely flatten everything, or you'll be partnered with someone who doesn't know how video games work. Not having that offline solo option is just unreal for a BioWare game. It's just so weird. This is such an out of character piece of software for them. And the other issue with the engine and Frostbite not being very comfortable with the sort of third-person shooter setup, I much prefer that engine for driving games and simulators. It does manage to cater for the Battlefield series quite well. There was also a lot of talk about EA breathing down the necks of BioWare and forcing them to sort of A, make this always online, B, make it full of microtransactions, and C, try and keep that addictive loot box psychology going. And I think that goes against a lot of their principles. There may have been creative clashes, and the result is the Anthem game. With that always online, people who own this game physically need to be really aware that EA or BioWare will switch off those servers. This is renting space on a server farm somewhere and costing them money. They did this with Battleborn, Gearbox, and it was a travesty, an awful thing to do, because they just stripped it completely off your system so that you couldn't even access it offline. The whole thing has to do a handshake at the start. That sort of thing needs to be stamped out with video games. I think it should be law that the content that you purchase should always be accessed without having to use the internet. With every single video game, I think there should be a base level single player piece of content. That one I'm going to campaign for, and you're going to like and subscribe and support the channel. There is a Patreon link in the description. I really enjoyed making this. This game isn't the disaster it was originally. It has been improved on a lot of performance levels and some more meat added to those missions and campaigns, but it is not what we were promised. And fingers crossed, I think BioWare are going back to the old Dragon Age roots and coming out with something pretty awesome. Also, the prettier it looks, the more it breaks my heart, the more I realise this world, if it was properly managed and built upon and not rushed out of the gate or full of microtransactions, could be quite an amazing place to have a co-op experience or even a single player experience. I was, of course, Couch Coop. I've got some more single player and local co-op content coming out shortly. I will see you down there.